Good morning. It's Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve. I finished decorating my tree last night. Didn't do as good a job as my daughter, though. I did not shake that up nearly enough, and I let it sit too long. I finally got my celery juice back. I was missing my celery juice. Good morning. I hope most of you have the day off today. Sorry. I had to spend some time today looking up the difference between feelings and emotions because I often get them confused. And so I wanted to make sure as I was speaking today that I helped you all understand the difference between feelings and emotions. And I still might get a little bit confused. I am not a licensed psychologist, by the way. Let me just make that very clear. I'm sorry, let me see if I finally got this right. Still some clumps in there, but I'm so used to not having the celery juice. All right. Alchemizing your pain through sex. Title might be a little bit of, well, I don't know. We'll see where it leads. We'll see where it leads. So what led me to this was this morning in my meditation, as I was feeling a little bit blissed out from it, and thinking about how in order to feel through, well, let me take a step back. Sorry, I did not organize my thoughts this morning, so bear with me. So I did a video yesterday. It's on my page further down, and I was thinking about when I was feeling depressed, and for me, I have seen mental illness manifest in my life in times when my ego was not in agreement with what was happening. And I was trying very hard to suppress my feelings of disappointment. And I was stuck in fantasy about what should be versus dealing with the reality of what was. And my brain was not really able to handle the reality of what was. And so I spent many decades, 3 decades, in and out of depression. I also remember how my body felt at that time. It's not like I couldn't feel orgasms or anything, but in fact, in some ways, for me, sex was often an escape route, right? It was the way I was able to feel any emotions. It was a gateway of sorts in that way. And I did a lot of crying during sex because it really helped me release a lot. And I think about many people in the world today who are walking around, and this is not particularly about mental illness, this is just about people walking around who are experiencing different ways of being in life that are preventing them from really enjoying life to their fullest, and sometimes not recognizing that their body is letting them know what it is that they need. I'm gonna read you guys something that I saw yesterday, and this is probably what'll help me out this morning. This little meme thing. All right. When a pattern is finally coming to an end, especially one that's been held in your body for a long time, that's when you'll face the most fear and the most resistance, because being set free actually feels incredibly uncomfortable and unsafe in relation to continuing to play out what you've always known. So I read that and I thought, which again, I was like, wow, which prompted me to remember my depression and things of that nature, because and reminded me of my experiences this past fall as I've come on here and talked about this fear and these panic attacks and all of this that was happening as my own nervous system was expanding. And I think about how many people are out here in the world who are experiencing symptoms in their body, thinking that there's something wrong with them, when really what it is your body is, you're trying to let go of things, and it's kind of just coming out. It's like eczema. I used to suffer from eczema. I mean, and the creases of my elbows and the backs of my knees as a teenager, while I was going through interestingly enough, I first experienced depression at the age of 10, and that was the onset of my eczema, and it was really, really bad in 6th grade when I was being bullied mercilessly. It was really bad on and off in high school when I was dealing with depression and just trying to figure out things in the world. Interestingly enough, I have not, well, except for like, and I know when something's going on, it's funny, like my ring finger starts itching, which is interesting. But I have not experienced any flares of eczema in almost 15 years. And part of that is also the depths of my depression, like, was starting to be alleviated at that time as well. So when you're shifting yourself, when you're doing this healing, when you're doing this work, when you're trying to undo family patterns, when you're, and look, I've heard people say this, I am the one to break the generational curses. Absolutely you are. Those of us who were born, I would say probably 1960 to 65, somewhere in there, upward. That's kind of the task we were given, should you choose, like, choose your own adventure, should you choose to accept it or not. It's like Mission Impossible, that is the task we were given. It's the task I was given. When you feel so called to examine and look through your patterns. Yeah. And part of that is also your body responding to it. So why does our body do this? There's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score. I highly recommend it. It is really dense. It's quite scientific. It was written more for psychologists who were learning about things. I study psychology. I love it. I love it is when you understand the intricacies of the brain and how this whole system, like your brain and nervous system, really work. It is fascinating. It's a whole information system highway that is fascinating. We take it for granted because we walk and chew gum at the same time. When you experience an event that causes that shocks your system. When I say your system, I mean your nervous system. That shocks your system. It gets stored and cataloged in your brain, because the purpose is to keep you alive, right? That since human beings were made, right? See that animal? Oh, it will kill you. When you see it, run. Like, there are responses that are hooked into us to help us survive. So you go through an experience, right? And everyone's using the word trauma now, and really, like, we're all traumatized. I mean, there are levels to the trauma, but the society that we're living in has created such a state where we're all experiencing trauma on some level. It's some more than others. And there are some people who experience huge traumatic events, and one person seems to walk away okay, and another person is in therapy for life. that's why I'm saying this whole system is fascinating. So something happens to you. You're in a car accident, at 8 years old. It happens, right? No one dies, but the sound of it, the sound of the crashing of the metal jolts you. The fire trucks that come, or the ambulances, if it's like no one dies, but it's like it's a car crash, gets categorized in your brain. And let's say it gets categorized in a way that your brain says, oh, cars, danger. That's it. And so from that point on, you have difficulty getting into a car. And this happens. This is real. This happens to people. You have difficulty getting into a car. You'll ride public transportation. Mind you, it's still a vehicle, right? But the brain is like, the bus, the trains are okay. The car, because you're a child, the car was the problem, not vehicles. The car was the problem. Now, for some people, vehicles become the problem, right? But the car was the problem. Now you're 18 years old. You're thinking you want to learn how to drive, but you haven't been in a car, right? And the idea of getting in one now fosters a response of hyperventilating. Like opening the door makes you shake, and this thing happened when you were 8 years old. You probably weren't thinking anything of it. Nobody was like, it's a car accident. But this is what your brain has done. You're shaking. You don't understand. You can't get behind the wheel. You can't drive. There's a fear there, and you're like, I can't do this, because your brain has associated this activity with all of that. So the same thing happens in relationships. You're in a relationship with someone. Let's take it all the way back. Let's take it all the way back, because this happens to a lot of us. You have a crush on someone, 13, 14, 15 years old. You really like them. Maybe you guys date, go out, whatever, your kids, for whatever reason, this person breaks your heart. Let's use that terminology. Anything. Y'all are children, right? They could have moved away. They could have cheated on you. The imprint of that is so strong in the beginning phases of your growth as a human being. The amount of grief and sadness that you feel around that is so strong, especially as you're going through puberty, that there's a part of your brain that's like, absolutely not, never again. Never again. We cannot experience the depth of that pain ever again. So it gets cataloged. And now, you date someone at 16, and you find that as the relationship gets closer, you start like pulling away. You're like, you know what? I'm not really into this relationship thing like that. Like, I don't really want to be, that involved with you like that. Let's just keep it casual. Let's keep it casual. This person's like, but I want to be with you. You're like, yeah, nah, we're good. And those are your patterns. Now you're developing patterns in response to the trauma you felt at this relationship that you were so deeply in, splitting apart. And so now your patterns become choosing people who are are wanting to run to you and you're like, nah, and it goes the opposite way, right? You can have the pattern of choosing people who won't be there for you and you have to kind of chase them, like you had to chase this person, you know, when you were younger. You had to chase after them. You had to get their love, find it. And it could also be a caregiver who kind of broke our heart too. Now you're creating patterns. Now you're getting into relationships that based off of the loss that you felt, the grief that you felt, in contraction or reaction to that. And so now you're in your 20s and you're thinking, these men or these women out here suck. You know, if you're the chaser, you're like, they always run away from me. Not realizing that you're choosing people who will always run away from you. And if it's the other way around, like part of you secretly pines for love, but you're like, hey, you know what? I just can't settle down. And these are just two extreme examples. There's a whole bunch of nuance in between. But can you see how an event creates a catalog in your brain, which then informs patterns in an effort to save you from that pain? Now, the ego is like a machine, right? So it's not nuanced. It's a machine. It's like a computer. As a matter of fact, the computer was modeled off of the human brain. So the ego was like, oh, pain, must avoid that pain. So we will block this. The ego's not thinking, man, if I block this pain, they're still going to experience the pain of wanting the thing and of chasing the people. Let's think about this for a minute. The ego doesn't do that. It doesn't do that. It just keeps reminding you that we're not supposed to be doing any of this. And you develop patterns. Now, you get older and you're like, oh, I've got patterns. Oh, I'm here to heal. Yeah, you know, like you're starting to realize some things, you're unraveling it, you know, whatever have you. And then when you go out on a date, you break out, got pimples, or you get physically sick, like diarrhea, stomach aches. The body does this shit, right? As you're working through this pattern and this fear, and then you're like, fuck, man, every time I meet somebody and I try to go out, something strange happens to my body. As it looks to purge this fear. And if we're not aware of any of this, we take it for face value. We take it completely for face value. Now I'm going to say something fairly bold and something that most people probably won't even think to do on a first date. I say talk about it. You show up at that date with that pimple right there. You show up because that's partly how you start to rewire what's happening. You show up. First of all, chance the other person isn't even going to notice it because they're so interested in spending time with you. Or you can bring it up. Yeah, I almost wasn't going to come out on this date tonight because I have this pimple right here. And it's so funny because it popped up right beforehand. But I've actually been working through these feelings of fear that I have around relationships. And I'm really learning a lot about myself as I do that. And one of the things that I'm learning is that my body will kind of want to do things in order to keep me from the possibility of good relationships. What have your experiences been like in this area? Or have you noticed any patterns? Now y'all about to have a good deep conversation. So there lessens the chance of you bonding over trauma. Deep conversation about it because of your honesty and vulnerability. So now I can get to the alchemizing pain through sex. So, and I probably should have titled this something differently. I couldn't figure out the title for like somatic, I didn't really want to label it that. So alchemizing pain through sex. The same receptors in the brain that deal with pain are also the same ones that deal with pleasure. It's not two separate areas in the brain. It's one of the reasons why people enjoy BDSM so much. There's pleasure in that pain. So that's like the basics. There's neuroscience and all that. I did a video on it. If you're in a sensual energy coven, you actually have access to it. It's in the 30 days of self-pleasure topic. And there's a video in there that explains the neuroscience of the brain. I be geeking out, y'all. I be geeking out over the brain. One of the reasons why yoni massage and linga massage have become popular in the past couple of years is because they help people to alchemize their pain through not sex, right? But just through the touching of the genitals. It's sort of similar to cognitive behavioral therapy, where you discuss the thing, you find your power in it, and then it no longer has a hold on you emotionally, which means it now no longer affects your actions or how you interact in the world. So healing sex can look like a man entering a woman, just keeping it simple. A man entering a woman's body with full consent, as he says things in her ear. This can all be agreed upon beforehand. As she expresses her emotion, as she cries through it, as he continues to stroke her. And so even as she's crying, there is this orgasmic feeling, and that feeling always becomes stronger than the pain. And it doesn't mean she has to relive the memory during that moment. That I would not recommend that, whatever the memory is. But he can say things to her around how she's feeling. And women can do the same thing for men. Same thing. Where you can speak affirmations into his ear. If you know and you've discussed with him beforehand that he's experienced feelings of abandonment, and many men have. And again, this flips back and forth. While he's in you or you're on top of him, you are loved, you are safe, you are whole, you are fill in the blank. This is a process that is so easy to do, and that most people don't do it. Where you can help to transform someone, and this is one of the many ways in which sex can be healing. I know I went kind of all over the place. It's hard for me to talk about alchemizing pain without understanding patterns and understanding emotions and feelings, and understanding really how the brain plays a part in this. Because if I just say, oh, you can alchemize your pain through sex, then the idea is, well, if I go have sex, then I'll feel better. And it's like, there really is a lot that is involved in all of that. And it's not difficult or challenging. There's just that there's a lot of steps in there, and understanding how you get from my caregivers weren't there for me, or I went through this horrendous breakup at a young age that have cemented these patterns in me, this way of thinking in me, to let me use sex as a way to unravel all that without understanding how all that even got bunched up in the first place. So you have to understand some of that part before you can get to the alchemical piece. And you know what? You can do this on your own as well, which is what sex bomb practice is that I do. Shout out to Perry Chase if you're interested. You should check out Sex Bomb, SXBMB, because that is a solo practice of alchemizing your emotions and your feelings through somatic work, body work. And so for those of you who don't know, so maybe next time I'll come on and I'll say it, soma is of the body. And so somatic work is work in which you are working the body, working through it in order to release trauma, PTSD, stuck emotions, which is what trauma is, stuck emotions. Somatic work can look like sex. It can look like self-pleasure, masturbation. Somatic work can look like dancing. Anything that moves the body, and specifically things that move the body in a way in which there's no particular, it's not a rigid goal, right? So while working out is like, yes, can be considered somatic, and this is just as I think about tantra and psychology, when you go to work out, it's a very specified thing that you're doing, whereas in somatic work, you're allowing your body to lead. You're allowing your body to determine what's happening, and you're being aware. It's closer to meditation. You're in awareness of what's happening in your body and what you're feeling in your body. So somatic work always brings you back to the present moment and helps to release those stuck feelings that are in you. Over the past 2 days, I've had conversations with people about trauma bonds. So this is interesting. And trauma bonding was something that newly came into my field as a phrase. Like it's like, how when you know what something is, but you didn't have a phrase for it. And so now there's a phrase for it. It's called trauma bonding. And how we begin to connect with others based on past trauma, which I discussed before. So now you know what trauma bonding is. Because you're so accustomed to it. And when you start doing things differently, your body may react to that. Fear, anxiety, physical symptoms like you're sick, like you have a cold. Your body may react to the shift that's happening in your nervous system because it does not compute with what's going on. Yeah, I probably should have titled this like somatic work for healing trauma or something, but I just felt so long and so scientific. I didn't know. Yeah, maybe I'll change it. We'll see. All right. Well, that's a lot of heavy on Christmas Eve. Oh man. I hope you have the day off today. If not, I hope you're getting out early. If not, I hope your work day is light. I hope it's light, like feather light, I hope you get to spend this time in peace. I'll be back on here tomorrow anyway, but I hope you get to spend this time in peace, whether that's alone, with family, with friends. just in peace and enjoy with yourself. All right, that's it for today. I love you all. I'll see you tomorrow.